Well, welcome, folks, to Inside the Leader's Mind, where what's in the way becomes your way. I'm your host, David Susan, and I am excited for our guest today, Dr. Joe Polich. Dr. Joe began her career as an engineer, holding senior technology roles and serving on corporate technology boards, supporting space satellite systems. And when an unexpected experience challenged what she believed about healing, her life and career took a remarkable turn. Today, she's a homeopath, inventor, and creator of ActivMed. ActivMend, got to get that right, with 10 patents related to her hydrogel delivery technology. Her journey brings together engineering, medicine, entrepreneurship, and a willingness to investigate what others might dismiss. Please welcome Dr. Joe.
Thank you, David. I am so very honored to be on the show. I'm super excited for our conversation.
Oh, I am too. I always do a prep with my guests to learn a little bit more about them, and I was so excited for today just to learn more. Here's where I love starting is you went from developing technology for space satellite systems
hmm
to becoming a homeopath and inventor.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah. So it's funny because what I tell people is if you would have told me when I graduated from college that I would be doing this now, I was very poor. I paid for college myself. I would have probably bet a lot of money saying there is no way I'm going to be doing that. And it was really something where so one of the things is homeopathy. Everyone thinks there's a large number of medicine that thinks it's quackery. And for me, it was the fact that I saw it work. And then when I researched it, it shouldn't have worked. And I played mommy homeopath for a while, et cetera, et cetera. But it was by far the most amazing medicine I'd ever seen. And it was that, oh my God moment. And that made me I cared at the time. I think I told you during the interview, realized I cared more about helping people than I did if their cell phone worked better, which I was the director of engineering in a cell phone group. So
That is a crazy twist. What led you in this path at the beginning?
at the beginning, what happened started as my 1-year-old child. By the time she was 2, she'd had very, very bad stomach problems, and we took her to every medicine. I didn't know alternative at that time. I was very classical, did all the normal medicine, took her to every specialist, pediatrician, sent her to, and nobody could do anything, and they did every test known to man. They couldn't figure it out. Anyone in your audience that has ever had a medical problem that nobody knows what it is deep, it is painful, and it is very hard to deal with. And they just were like, ignore it. I'm like, no, she is really sick. And she's 2 years old at this point, right? And so it just, by pure absolute luck, I go into Whole Foods. I pull a homeopathic vial. At this point, I have no idea. I literally was, and this is a little bit about me, if it's in Whole Foods, it must be safe. So literally, it's about as much thinking as I did. And I'm like, and so I brought it home, and by sheer luck, I wouldn't recommend this because most homeopathic remedies need to be very tailored. It was like as if you decided that you wanted to get a heartburn medicine and had all the medicine in the world sitting on a wall, and you pull one out and you happen to get a heartburn medicine. That's how unusual it was. And I give it to her, and she'd been sick for a year, and every single day. And for the first time in over a year, she was better. And it is, when you've seen that, and especially the parents out there, it's like when you've got a sick child and nobody can figure it out, it's very emotional. So that's why.
And so then what happened? Like, so from that incident to leading you to what you now do, what was that path in between then?
So the path started again. Well, the path, unfortunately, is always related to my children. And so what happened was I started researching homeopathy. And if it would have been something like, I know, CoQ10, I would still be an engineer. But it was the fact that it's not supposed to work that intrigued me. Then I went to lots of places where you can play mommy homeopath and be at around a bunch of people that are homeopaths. And I found that when it worked, it was astounding. My little one I have 2 children. They would have a fever of like 102. All the parents out there know this. I would give them a remedy. And when it didn't work, nothing happened. But when it worked, her fever would drop or his fever would drop within an hour in a clear, clear way. And this is without obviously any other, fever suppressors. And so what happened was over time, there's 2 things. One is being an engineer was really a very good background for being a homeopath because it actually requires more analytical requirements than anything I've ever done. There's a way of doing homeopathy that is not very good, but if you want to be really good at it and successful in it, you've got to be a boss at analyzing data. I'd spent my entire career analyzing data. And what I found was, again, going back to the kids, part of it was that I really want my daughter had another more chronic problem. She had a cough that would not go away for years, like years and years and years. I would like not want her in school. And the homeopaths that I saw couldn't figure it out. And part of the reason I went back to school was I wanted to be able to figure out what my daughter's remedy was. And we did in the end. She ended up, the cough went away, and it was so wonderful because she would be up all night and I didn't get a lot of sleep. So this was when she was like 4 or 5.
So why, and you kind of answered this, but why did you feel so compelled to move on away from engineering?
Well, there's 2 pieces.
'Cause that's a
One,
big, I mean, that's a
oh,
big deal, right? My degree's in engineering, and I know for me it was a big deal. And for most people, I mean, it's a title, it's money, it's
oh, 100%. So I'm going to address that. I'm going to answer your first question. I'm going to address kind of the secondary question that you have there, which is very important to me. And that is, so for me, it was, so my nature is I love helping people. Like I get dopamine by helping people unbelievably. I just held a whole party for one of my friends because her daughter was getting married and she didn't have a place to have it. And I'm like, do it here. Lots of work, but it's what you do when you care about people. And what I realized is when I helped somebody, when I figured that remedy out, it was one of the most rewarding things I'd ever done in my entire life. That is part of it. Now, going there, to your point, I have 3 engineering degrees. 3. This is kind of something we talked about. This is really hard. As an engineer, you say, oh, you're an engineer. Initially, people are like, oh, wow, you're really smart. You're not crazy. We respect you, et cetera, et cetera. You tell them you're a homeopath and they look at you like, okay, you're just weird and we're not going to talk to you anymore. Completely different. That was very, very, very difficult. But when you can help somebody to the degree, when I was practicing, I don't practice anymore. I miss it, David, so much because people walk in, and when somebody walks in and says to you, you have changed my life, there's nothing better. That's worth more money than anything in the world. Being an engineer doesn't hold a candle to that.
so what was that like then just to walk away, right? Successful director of engineering or whatever the last role was, and then to start all over.
So for me, that wasn't terribly difficult because I mean, we literally had to move to go back to chiropractic school. So you have to so in the United States, you need a medical license in order to practice. So I needed to get some sort of medical license. So we moved from Virginia over to Chicago. And for me, it was such a passion project that it was not that difficult. Like the schooling I thought, oh, it'll be like my master's in engineering. No, way harder. It was like, okay, that was a little bit harder than I expected. The chiropractic degree. Yeah, I didn't expect that. That was just like, oh my God. But when you're so driven, I guess I just got so much joy out of helping people that it wasn't that difficult. I mean, I started to practice, and because of the engineering degree, I was very good at it. I'm very analytical. I tend to be somebody who, like, you have to ask questions in a specific way because it's very easy to think you've helped someone when you really haven't. And so because of my eons of, we didn't talk about this, but when I was an engineer, most of my work was troubleshooting manufacturing problems. And so you cannot be somebody that like has a ability to follow false information. If you want to be really good at troubleshooting manufacturing problems, I'd travel all over the country. Basically, somebody would have a problem. I worked for a big company. They would have a problem, and they would send me out to go figure out what the problem is. You cannot be somebody. You can't be good at that and be somebody that has a tendency to not be very precise in following data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah, love that
And
you're an engineer, by the way.
and
Helps a
so,
ton.
and it's so funny because I'm the same way. I get more of a rush, a dopamine hit from helping others. So I think that's also why I had an interest in connecting. Is there's a lot of similarities, and I don't.
100%.
And you and I talked about this. There's not a lot percentage wise, not as many people that really are like that in a way,
Hmm.
especially the human side, human connection.
Yeah.
So I think you had mentioned to me you yourself had an ACL injury.
Yep.
And if I recall, that was kind of a turning point in part of this whole career. Tell me a little bit about what happened there.
So I think what you're getting to is, so I'm in chiropractic school, and one of my patients had a problem. And I went to my clinician, and there's something that if any of your listeners have used it, it'd be arnica. There's one homeopathic remedy people know. I think you and I talked about. You've used arnica. Pretty much everybody's used an arnica gel out there, right? Pretty common. And so one of my patients needed some arnica, but they had a really, really strong problem. And the arnica gel that you find is super weak, right? There's pills that you take that are way stronger. And so I go to my clinician. I'm like, oh, can I give this person like strong arnica, like the gel? I don't even bother using it. It would not do anything for this, right? And they're like, no, we're chiropractors. We don't give people things by mouth. We put it on them. And I'm like, okay. So I figured out a way to get something topical. What ends up happening is, so it worked so much better than I even expected. I just thought it would work like the normal dosage you take by mouth, and it was way better. Okay. So fast forward, I'm practicing. Now, I don't do a lot of sprains and strains. I treat people for other things, right? But every once in a while, somebody would come in where a kid, bumps his head, or, the myriad of things, I sprained your ankle, whatever. And I would use this topical. Well, about sometime into that, like 5 years, I'm just using it on patients. I think it works great. I tell people how to do what I did when I was in a clinician, but don't really think much about it. And then I ruptured my ACL. And so again, I don't treat sprains and strains at this point much. And I put my little topical concoction on, and it doesn't swell. Now, I don't know, David, that this was surprising because I don't treat ACLs. I thought, 10 or 20% of the population must not swell with an ACL, and I don't think much about it. Well, because I was a chiropractor, I went to see the head of orthopedics at Northwestern University in Chicago. He had been the orthopedist for the Bulls, for the Cubs. He was a big deal in
That's
Chicago.
kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. So I go see him, and he's this lovely, lovely, lovely. He's now passed, but he's this lovely human. He is sweet and kind and just kind of reminds you of grandpa. And so he's like, oh, and he just, he says to me, hey, did it swell? And I'm like, no. But I don't know that, you gotta understand, this wasn't a plan. This was
Right.
right? I just know. And he's like, he gives me one of these grandpa ways, like, excuse me, young lady. I'm kidding. It wasn't quite that bad. Excuse me, young lady, but I have been the head of orthopedics for 30 years, and I've never seen a fully ruptured ACL that's not swollen. And I knew it might be, I thought it was like 10 or 20% better. So I did take pictures of it, showed it to him. And he's like, nope, not possible. And I'm like, it's fine. Just fix my knee. I just need my knee repaired. So I go get my knee repaired, and I use the same topical. Well, he is really, really, really worried because I'm not using the Celebrex that he's prescribed. I don't quite realize how worried he was at the beginning. And I tell him, and I'm like, it's fine. I'm just using the same stuff that we used before. And it wasn't swelling much, right? But I don't realize how much it's affecting it, right? So I learn at a month, he says to me, I didn't. Now, first of all, David, I love that you're an engineer, people, because you're going to get this, people that do research, people that are used to looking at data, like myself, never call it on one. You never call it on one example of something unless it is so far out there that it is not possible, right? So I'm not used anti-inflammatories. And apparently I learned this, that when you don't use anti-inflammatories, and I didn't use anything else, I didn't go to PT or something like that. You can actually do a lot of more with PT, and they've got better technologies now. But the time I just stood around, moved it as much as possible, which is pretty normal. Normally, you can't move your knee in a month if you don't use anti-inflammatories. I went to a PT at a month. I had almost complete flexion and extension, meaning I could move my knee almost completely. And that was what got it for him, because he says, you're better than 90% of my patients that use anti-inflammatories. You've discovered something remarkable. And it
Okay.
wasn't until then, had I not blown my ACL out, I never, ever, ever would be where I am today.
Okay. So I want to back up for our listeners. You were not a pro athlete at the time, were you?
No.
Okay, because
Just so you
that
know.
someone might go,
No, I did play soccer in college, but yeah, no.
okay, but you were not, because sometimes what happens
Oh,
is you have these
100%.
athletes.
I was a mom
Okay, right.
on
So
crutches.
so this was kind of special. So what else did the surgeon observe at this point?
So this was a for him, right? Because he was, if he had been somebody, because we all run into doctors who are willing to accept most things. The fact that he was absolutely no, he was so conservative, etc. Because Northwestern is actually a pretty conservative university, at least in medicine. It was the fact that it changed so dramatically, but he was very much of a realist. And he said, you know what, Joe, I'm the head of orthopedics and I could not get a homeopathic study through, even if I sponsored it, because it's such a push, especially for Northwestern in orthopedics, against homeopathy.
Right, right.
And so what he recommended, so what I ended up doing, and so I put my arm, so I ended up building a patch, right? So, and I wanted to do clinical studies, and we ended up doing clinical studies. But he's like, I can't get it through here. And so it turned out that plastic surgeons and dermatologists used arnica a lot because of a lovely product that had come out before. And so I started in the plastic surgeon and dermatology world, and it was used to prevent bruising. Arnica is very, very good at preventing bruising. And in fact, we did a clinical study that showed if you want to look at our website, you'll see it, and you'll see this really bad bruised face, really bad bruise. And then this was the thing that I didn't expect. We didn't just resolve the bruising, we prevented it. We literally, I don't even know if I told you this when we took a 3-pound bar, dropped it 20 inches onto somebody's hip to cause this, yes, exactly, nasty bruise. We could prevent that bruise 100%.
I want to know who volunteers to have that done.
There's an
No, they're getting
IRB.
paid,
We
but
had to
yeah,
get it approved,
you
and
gotta pay
yes,
a
it
lot.
was approved. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
So
it was the only way we needed a way of consistently reproducing bruises.
That's insane. Now, for clarification, this isn't just the arnica you buy off the shelf.
No. So what
Special
we did was
formulation.
we figured out how to get so the issue is that we had to patent the way of making this. This is a patch. For those of you, it's a patch that lays on the skin. And so we had to figure out the reason. So one of the things is, when I was first playing with this, I had no interest in starting a company. I just had somebody take the high potency and put it in a gel similar to the rub-in gel that you get. And it didn't work. And so because now this is where the engineering, I have 2 degrees in materials engineering, which means I know polymers, I understand structures, et cetera, et cetera. And I will straight up tell you, I did not intentionally, accidentally figured out the only way you can make a patch or a gel, any gel. You can't make a rub-in gel or anything like that in a high potency. And it was just dumb luck, straight up.
Sometimes luck is a good,
Sometimes luck is a good
that's how we got
thing.
Post-it notes. That's how we got Febreze, right? All these are dumb luck accidents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway,
keep going.
I'll jump. Did you have a question?
No, keep going. I love it.
So the most insane thing that I thought is I thought to myself, well, if this really conservative orthopedist would be willing to do this, I can get big pharma to, like, I show them that this works, and I can get a whole bunch of doctors to believe in this because I'm going to be able to show them really, really well that it works. David, do you know how insane that was?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
like, I ended up doing it. We ended up getting out. I still am astounded at my optimism, stupidity, not really sure which. But we ended up getting, so to anybody who, oh, this doesn't work. Well, Allergan, who makes Botox, did very much diligence, went to a number of specialists and the top doctors in the world, looked at our clinical studies. They licensed this product for bruising for their patients.
Wow.
And I, to this moment, am still shocked that that happened, but they did. First time ever.
That's insane. And this
It
is
is, right? It is insane.
now somewhere in this process it's patented, is that correct?
Yeah. We patented it.
So that's a big deal,
Yeah,
right?
well, it's a big deal. I don't think we talked about this either, but I'll briefly say that when I went to the patent office, they would they're not allowed to do this technically, but there was such a bad view of homeopathy that their first position was, we will not patent any homeopathic product
Right.
out there
Right.
because it can't possibly it. And again, using clinical data, clinical studies, we were able to completely reverse that and get them to actually issue the first truly homeopathic patent ever. Well,
That's
maybe not
insane.
ever. They might have done it in the 1800s, but certainly
Right.
recently.
That's remarkable. A little bit of persistence, a little bit of dumb luck, yeah,
Or insanity, depending on what
and
you want to
insanity.
call it.
Right? So,
Yeah.
so homeopathy, it can generate a little skepticism, like you said, right? People go, "Oh, is it, whatever." Um, how do you how do you evaluate evidence and communicate what the product can and can't do?
So that's actually a really interesting point. So, somewhat related to that, I believe in being incredibly straightforward and honest on what it can do. Radical honesty, radical integrity, I don't know what you call it.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
so one of our things is arnica doesn't do everything. Like, it's not good for arthritis. You have an arthritic problem. I have lots of homeopathic remedies out there. It's maybe a little bit okay if it's swollen, but 90+% of arthritic problems are not going to be affected by arnica. It just doesn't. That's not what it does. And so looking at that, one, you want to, I mean, I think the fact that if you go to our website, we literally have a spot on our website, which what it does and what it doesn't do. And some of it surprised me. For instance, our product, it's phenomenal for, so I should probably mention it. So what I ended up doing after we licensed to Allergan, I built a product called ActivMend, which is this patch. Here's the box, way pretty, not designed by me. And it's ridiculous for sprains and strains like your knee or your ankle. And if you go to our website, you'll see ridiculous things that you'd be like, this is not possible level of reduced swelling. Like if you use it like 24 hours right away in the first 24 hours, you can reduce your swelling of your ankle by about a half inch, which is just not done. But what you'd see on that same thing, so sprains, strains, anything related to that, swelling, it helps you recover faster. People are getting back way, way faster. Typically anywhere, pretty much consistently will get you back in about half the time, right? But there's things that I was surprised about, and we put it in there, like it doesn't work on shin splints. And I know because I now realize what shin splints are. They're similar to high ankle sprains. It also doesn't work great on ankle sprains, but not on high ankle sprains. And it's because the sesamotic joint that's there is completely different tissue than what your elbow and your wrist are typically. And so it doesn't work on that. But we tell you that. And literally, if you email us, they'll be like, hey, I've got blah, blah, blah. We will, again, radical honesty. No, do not buy our product. because it won't work. I do not know of any medical, or maybe it exists. I'm not aware of any medical product that will not say, oh yeah, just try it. Maybe I'm wrong.
And why did you decide to go that route?
Because it's who I was as a doc. Homeopathy doesn't work on everything. And so I literally had my assistant. There's a number of things. Like if you're, for instance, type 1 diabetes, your pancreas is completely toast by the time you start developing symptoms, we can't do anything. Homeopathy across the board amplifies what your body normally does. If your body can't do it, we can't do it. So I would have my receptionist, they'd be like, oh, I have type 1 diabetes. I'm sorry, we can't help you. Because to me, it's just kind of who I am. And so for another one, like if somebody might have tennis elbow and they're in their 60s and they've had it for 20 years. Well, what happens is, let's say you have tennis elbow. Well, what happens is your collagen will eventually permanently degrade. My product's not going to help you there. Personally, if you have it, I would try it. But it also speaks to fix it don't wait 20 years, get it on right away, fix it right away, don't let it degrade. But we, again, on our website, it's a much more complex point, but we're really trying to say, no, there's actually where if you have an ankle sprain, assuming it's a standard lateral ankle sprain, it is really, 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 really unusual that it would not work. Like as in, is there something wrong metabolically with you level of it? But chronic, like tendinitis when you're in your 60s, very, very possible it won't work because it's been something you've lived with for 20 years. You deal with it in the beginning, heal it up completely, then you hopefully don't end up with long-term degradation.
Wow.
But do
Wow.
you get how, like, one of the things that, like, we've talked about this, it's like, I want people to get, it's like, to me, that's the honor of homeopathy and how I approach it. I am going to approach it scientifically. I am not going to say that it works on everything. Personally, if you ever speak to any physician and they say, even a Western medicine doc, I can fix anything, you should leave the office. Do you agree?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always, it's like anything when they go, oh, we can solve every problem. It's like finding, I think as leaders that are listening, I think it's realizing what you do really well.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you say you're good at everything, whether it's a product or yourself as a leader, uh, then it's like what I tell a lot of leaders is as soon as you think the cup is full, you can't put any more in. Meaning, as soon as oh, we do it all, then you stop either innovating or as a leader, you stop trying to get better because you start to believe your own BS, basically.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Which actually leads me to this idea of, when someone has irrational optimism, like, you know what? We're gonna get it approved. We're gonna go to a major company. Um, like when for other visionary, when is that visionary and when is that really crossed into denial for someone? Like,
So we talked about it. I advise startups. That's what I do a lot now. It's kind of my give back thing. And so as long as the data is consistent, for instance, I'm working with a company who I just found out that there's a competing product that's further along, and I thought this company had patents to control it. They don't, or it doesn't look like it. And they're kind of like, well, I don't want to look at it. It's like, no, investors are not going to invest in you unless you've got something that's a blocking patent where other people can't bring a competing. So it's always check. Irrational optimism is fine based on the data that you have. Like one point, I checked a bunch of things before I even started and there was like 4 things. And if they had been wrong, they'd been said no, I still would be practicing. So
wow.
it's like be optimistic, but check the data. And the data says, no, you've got to follow it. Like
Yeah.
if like it's shin splint's one of them. Up
Yeah.
until 2 years ago, if you would have asked me, does this concoction help shin splints? Absolutely. I would have been like, sure, it should be similar to a sprain. It's not. Well, it is a high ankle sprain, I think, but it's like you can't ignore the data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about leadership. I want to ask you about entrepreneurship for a minute. What, so what did engineering prepare you for as an engineer, as an entrepreneur? And what did it leave you unprepared for? Does that
It's a
make
good
sense?
question. Okay. So, as an engineer and as an entrepreneur, you spend a lot of your time problem solving. A lot of time, and especially mine, since I ran around, literally my job was to run around the country and, big manufacturing companies, fiber optic, repeater companies would having problems in their manufacturing. And I'd have to make sure it wasn't delaying um, us on the other end, or a satellite company was making chipsets. Um, I needed to learn how to solve problems. And that is common to entrepreneurship 100%, because as a founder, there's no way, unless you've worked in another company and had that level of responsibility, you cannot predict what's going to come up. And even if you've done it before, different problems are going to come. So that is really good. I would say the flip side of that is uh, engineering, while lots of problem solving, you have data for it. Raising money and many things within the world of entrepreneurship. You can't do a you can't do, well, I know clinical, you can't do a manufacturing assessment to go figure out how to do these things. And so you don't have as clear of data to follow. And so that's the hard part. Does that make sense?
Totally. As an engineer, yeah, because I would always look for data.
Yeah.
And I'll
Well,
just share.
in your job now, I'm guessing you have less certainty and less data than you did when you were practicing as an engineer.
Absolutely. And in
Hmm.
fact, I'll tell you what happened was I I had made, so what prompted it, and we'll get back to you in but I want to share this with the audience. I had made a couple of bad career decisions. I went to a company, I was a VP, and I went for the money, a lot of
Hmm.
money, 400,000 stock options. It was, and honestly, it was, I'd say greed, but the CEO was a Fortune 500 CEO, the very competitive interview process, and it was remarkable. And it didn't work out. It was a really bad fit. I got in there, and after 2 months, I'm like, what did I do? And I was talking to one of my coaches that I work with, who was advising me back then, and he said, David, I knew a number of times when you did stuff, you were making decisions based on data.
Ah,
He says you weren't going with your instinct. You weren't going with your gut. You poo-pooed, you went logic, 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 data, data, data because of the engineering. But the stuff, the gut instinct, which we have millions of years of programming in our genetics,
yep.
animals do that. And he started working with me, and I realized, and I had to start changing my mantra, which is I trust my instinct, I trust my gut. And it's one of the things that I now coach executives and leaders on
Hmm.
is learn how to put aside some of the engineering, the logic,
Got it.
and listen to that instinct of I was going to ask you about this. You, from our conversation, deeply empathetic toward people,
100%.
which oftentimes, like just like in my example, sometimes we're not. The more engineering you are, it's number,
Yeah.
number, number, and it's rare. How do you, and what would you advise other leaders that get so wrapped up in data that they forget to be empathetic to their team? What would you advise them based on your own
So that's
experience?
somewhat hard for me to answer because I come empathetic first. So my bigger problem is I tend to be too empathetic, which is also a problem in a
Uh,
million different ways.
yeah.
So I will tell you it's hard because for me, I need to decrease empathy instead of always going to high empathy. So that's one thing that for me. But, you know, sitting down, and I really think it comes down to something you've talked in some of your podcasts about, is it's the listening. If you really listen to people, it's very difficult not to get to their humanity And when you get to the humanity, I think the empathy comes.
What do you think gets in the way of that, in your opinion?
Well, some of it's personality. It is part of the big five personality things. And I think somewhat of it's innate. And you can force yourself to pay attention, which allows you to be more empathetic. And sometimes, and I think that we all run into this, sometimes we're going so fast. Like we're rush, rush, rush. We need to get it done. We need to get it done that we forget the empathy piece. We don't listen anymore. But personally, I mean, you and I have worked with engineers. Like, you're right. Like, I am a really weird engineer. Engineers don't, I love people. I'm highly sociable. My empathy level is too high, literally off the charts. There's not very, and you add that I'm
That's
a
a
homeopath.
rare. Yeah.
It's so rare. Yeah,
Yeah.
skip the homeopathic piece. It's
That's the purple
super
cow,
rare.
right? Yeah.
Yes, I'm unusual. And so, I think really it's the listening and taking a moment to say, I'm going to pay attention to my people. And maybe, if it's not something natural, like I'm sure you've recommended this, say for 1 hour a day, I'm going to really work on being empathetic to one or more person a day. It helps.
Yeah. I think it's like anything, it's building a muscle
Hmm.
and the muscle memory, the habit. I also believe whatever we're doing, I think it's the feedback mechanism to test, just like you probably did with your product, right? You test and you look at the feedback and go,
Hmm.
what, and think, what's the feedback? Is it
Yep.
working? Is it not working? And am I getting more out of my people? Am I getting better relationship? Am I connecting more? Are they willing to do more for me? Are they less resistant? And you use that as a feedback loop. And I think sometimes, and I'm curious if your opinion on this, if we kind of people shut that off, they
Yeah.
shut
Well,
off
you
the
don't want
feedback
to
loop.
know. You
Yeah.
don't want to know. Yeah, of course you shut it off. If you think the answer is going to be something you don't want to know, you don't want to know. Yeah, I agree.
And sometimes it's just different and we don't like different. We don't like
100%.
change.
Yep.
So, our podcast is called Inside the Leader's Mind, but the tagline is what's in the way becomes the way. So for you, other than what you've already discussed, if you look back over your life, your career, what is something that was really in the way that ultimately became the way for you? Because you either
So,
went through it or around it, or, you know,
yeah. Um,
it
it goes back to kind of a question you brought up earlier, and that is, I'm an engineer and I'd been practicing homeopathy with friends and family, and anyone else would let me play around it. Fortunately, the cool thing about homeopathy is it's really, really safe, right? If it doesn't work, it does pretty much nothing. But there was a lot of years where I could not stomach the idea, because trust me, even when I was an engineer and I hadn't gone to the dark side to become a homeopath, I would talk to people that had mentioned I was into homeopathy, and they definitely looked at me like I had grown a new ear out somewhere, out of me, out of my head. And so for me, the barrier was, and you've mentioned it, was not easy, was to go from being a respected engineer to go become a homeopath. But I have given to the world so much more by making that change than I ever could have as an engineer.
wow.
Yeah.
And fill me in, are you still in the business? Do you run the business? Did you
I
sell the
still run the
business? Where are you
business.
at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we licensed the first product to Allergan, and then we brought out a consumer product that's called ActivMend. I showed you the boxes. And it is, we sell it for any sprain or strain, but we found that the pictures of ankle sprains are because again, everybody's like, what is this product? Nobody knows. Yeah, I'm going to believe this product says it does this, right? Well, pictures are worth 1,000 words, and being able to demonstrate it actually, like we see huge swollen ankles in 24 hours, clear differences there. So I still run that product, and now I had to learn a whole different skill set, which is understanding how to like do consumer stuff, because I'd never done that before.
That's a whole new thing. I used to coach girls volleyball. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So many, so
so
many
many.
injuries in that.
That's one
But
of our main
any
people.
sport, but here's the funny one. I think the real market are those dads that are stepping on Lego in the middle of the night, and then they
Maybe.
misstep and they
Yeah.
roll the ankle, and then and anyway, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right, so as I want to move toward the end here, just for time, but and this is amazing. What is a question? This is kind of the question I signature question for me. When I was little, that my aunts and uncles would say, David, how are you? Good. How's school? Good. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, why don't they ask me about this or this or this, computers or what? They didn't know to ask me. And then I remember my daughter a few years ago. I was talking to my daughter and, I would not grill her, but I would say, what about, how's this? How's this? And it's like, you ask too many questions. And then at another breath, another time, she's like, well, you don't know anything about me. And so I'm like, all right, my thought is, okay, so what questions should I be asking you that I don't know to ask you? So the question for you is, what is a question you rarely get asked or rarely talk about, but you wish people would ask you, but they just don't know to ask you?
Why did it, why did I really do all of this? And it really goes back to what we touched upon. I was an engineer that was really well respected, and I became a homeopath. And I want if I'm wildly successful, what I would really like to do is do all of the clinical studies that no one can afford to do, because nobody in government will fund. People are like, why don't you have more studies? Well, because everyone else gets NIH funding. We can't. I will really love to do all the clinical studies that I know how to design and I know how to do. And my product is so easy to do it with. We can show that there's a swelling difference. We can show that. And I would fund it so that there's large amounts of data showing that homeopathy works. That's really my ulterior reason for really wanting to make a successful company.
And to be able to help others, I guess.
And to be able to help others, because it is, for the things that it does well, I am not aware of any other medicine that is strong and is capable.
That's amazing. Now, do you miss engineering at all? Do you
I
miss
don't
the
miss
previous life?
engineering. I miss the people. I get along with engineers way better than anyone else. I miss practicing. Through starting this company, I was not as good of a doc, and I have a integrity thing. I want to be really good at if I'm going to be, you're going to pay me money to have me do something, I want to be good at it. I miss practicing medicine so much, but I know I'm helping more people and I'm doing better for homeopathy by doing what I'm doing, but I really miss practicing.
And I hear that about a number of people that move into leadership sometimes miss the doing
Mm-hmm.
of what their role was, whether it was technology or whether
Mm-hmm.
computers or medicine or,
Yep.
and they move in. I've talked to a guy that runs hospitals. He was a doctor. And he's like, I miss medicine. He goes, yeah, I get to manage it or nurses. Just so I hear that a lot.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
impact is better,
fascinating.
but the personal impact, I think, is less. Yeah.
Well, if someone wants to learn more, if they want to try this, they want to get it, they want to research it, help me understand the best step for someone.
The simplest thing is to go to our website. It's www.activmend.com. I don't know. Will you put a link into
I'll
the?
put a link. Yep,
Yeah,
I'll
you
put a
put in
link.
a link. And just go there and go see if, maybe I'm just making all of this up and none of the stuff that I've said is true on the website, in which case you can personally email me and I'll go make sure it's fixed, because it was certainly intended to be that way. So just reach out there and, we are a company that cares. You build your company around what matters. And so if you've got a question, and like I said, if you're like, will it work on this? You will get an authentic answer of yes or no. And if my staff doesn't know, they just reach out to me and I tell them. So yeah,
Love
go to
it.
activemend.com and yeah. And we're also on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. And I think if you just put in something like sprain patches, you probably find it too.
Cool. And
So
you mentioned something, and I don't want you to put it on the spot. So
yeah,
that you mentioned advising startups. Do you still
yeah.
do that? Is that something that you are actively doing? If people want to learn more, is that even an option?
So I'm relatively selective. on who I will advise. So I'll be straight up on that one. But yeah, and so I think, you can reach out to me at dr.jo@activemend.com. And that's the email that typically we work with. And so you can reach out to me and then ask me about it. But I will admit I'm pretty selective on who I work with.
But
So
that's good to know.
yeah.
You know, just like getting it approved by big pharma.
Yeah.
You don't ask, you don't get, right? So you never
Yeah.
know. But anyway, well, Dr. Joe, I've loved having you on there, and I find a fascinating story to go from multiple degrees engineering to totally shifting doctor, homeopathy, inventor, entrepreneur, success. It's really a remarkable story. And I think a lot of it, folks, is perseverance, but also willing to take that risk. And we didn't really talk about a lot about that, but you really have to go for it if you're passionate about it. And I think that's exciting. So thank you for sharing your story today.
Well, thank you for letting me share it. And like I told you when we talked, you're a really impressive person. And I'm very, very honored to have been chosen to be on the show.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And folks, thank you for listening. Share this, if you've enjoyed it. We're always looking to grow our audience, and we're always looking for amazing guests. So feel free to reach out to us and leave comments. For Inside the Leader's Mind, I'm David Susan, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.